All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, anytime Joe Biden emerges from his basement cave, he assures us he's getting advice from the best and the brightest around him on how to handle the coronavirus pandemic. One of the dynamics Ryan Grimm has highlighted on this show this week is that given his obvious decline in mental faculties, that whomever Biden picks as vice president is arguably even more important than normal in terms of who will actually run the country. And I believe that the same is in terms of advisors and cabinet positions that Biden is going to elevate. Lo and behold, we've got a certain small peek behind the curtain yesterday when Bloomberg News reported that Biden is reportedly being closely advised by the Larry Summers on what their economic response to the corona depression should be. So if you're unfamiliar with Larry Summers' work, it's fair to call him one of the literal architects of neoliberalism. Summers has been in and out of the White House and of Democratic presidents since the Bill Clinton era, when he served as Secretary of the Treasury. He then, of course, served as the president of Harvard before returning as Obama's director of National Economic Council. He was the Treasury Secretary who advocated permanent normal trade relations with China. When he got back to the White House under Obama, he fought as hard as he could to make sure that big banks got bailed out before poo-pooing the idea that homeowners might deserve a bailout as well. And in the midst of this pandemic, Summers recently had the gall to tweet last month, quote, "Why can't the greatest economy in the history of the world produce swabs, face masks, and ventilators in adequate supply?" He conveniently forgot in February 2012, he told a bunch of Wall Street executives that opponents of outsourcing are, quote, Luddites. And if you're looking for the last man on earth who still thinks globalization and offshoring American jobs was a good thing, look no further than Larry Summers. That's just from a right-wing perspective. Summers is deeply hated by the left, so much so that Robert Kuttner over at the American Prospect mocked up a do not reappoint list for Joe Biden and put Summers at the very top of the list, writing, quote, "Summers pushed financial deregulation in the Clinton administration, privatization for the former Soviet Union. He moonlights at Harvard University as a professor while making big bucks at a hedge fund, D.E. Shaw." Bloomberg News acknowledges in the story that progressives would likely be roiled by the revelation that Summers is involved, to which I scoff because Bernie Sanders already endorsed Joe Biden. AOC said definitively yesterday she'll be voting for him. Why should Biden care about anything that they have to say? They're irrelevant. Bloomberg News reveals that one of the key reasons Biden may be courting Summers is because, quote, "Summers' involvement in Biden's campaign, however, would likely reassure Wall Street that Biden is not moving too far for the left from the centrist positions that earned him his establishment support." So the fact that Larry Summers is at the center of crafting Joe Biden's economic response tells you everything you need to know about how his presidency is going to go. I return again to the Axios report from last month, which details his prospective cabinet, with Jamie Dimon as Treasury Secretary, a bank executive as the Commerce Secretary, and many, many more. And as I've said, the Trump cabinet, it has its problems in my view. But clowns like Larry Summers are most certainly not in this administration. And the thing about Joe Biden is that when he's lucid, he will actually tell you exactly who he is. He has not learned anything in the last 40 years. He still believes all the same things that he did last time around. He still believed for the last 40 years in politics. We know exactly what we're going to get, and we simply can't afford to go back in time when men like Larry Summers ran this country. And isn't it just so revealing, Crystal? I mean, I was thinking about you and the progressive left when reading that, because what does he say in that? They go, they're like, the progressives will be pissed, but we got to show Wall Street that we're on board.
What really matters.
That's because Wall Street is like, you're either going to get my cash or not. And Bernie and AOC are like, no, I'm going to vote for you. So that's a perfect example just of that dynamic that we've talked often about on the show. But returning to it, I mean, Larry Summers, this is what Robert Kuttner wrote about. Bailout, wrong. Permanent normal trade relations with China, wrong. Privatization of the former Soviet Union, we don't talk about that one as much as anymore. That was a disaster for the Russian economy, and arguably why we have authoritarianism in Russia today. I can go on and on and on with Mr. Summers, who has long been a great friend of the financial industry. But look, this was the conceit of the Obama administration, running on the backs of like a left coalition, coming into the office and appointing guys like Larry Summers. And Biden is not even hiding it. I mean, they leak it right to Bloomberg News. 5 people with knowledge of the discussion. Larry Summers is the one who is there. So, Larry Summers was so bad.
And those are intentional things. That's like you want.
That was
those,
a signal. In Bloomberg News, it was shot straight at Wall Street saying, hey, guys, don't worry about it. You're all good.
Well, we're going to keep nothing is fundamentally going to change, right? I mean, that could be the Joe Biden tagline. And look, if you're one of those people, that's exactly what you want to hear because it's going really well for you. I mean, you put it perfectly. This is not only like an emblem of neoliberalism, this is a chief architect of neoliberalism. And this is where, it's did you actually mean it when you said that Donald Trump is not the problem, he's a symptom of the problem, right? I mean, yes, he is an issue in and of himself, but what brought us the forces that would lead white working class and other voters to throw in behind Donald Trump? And you have to look at that story of neoliberalism, that privileging of markets and GDP and efficiency and the stock market over other previously core values, that privileging of that white affluent suburbanite over the multiracial working class. That is what, when you talk about permanent normal trading relations with China, I mean, that is the policy that is most almost emblematic of exactly that shift. And so to not only be quietly getting advice from this guy, but to intentionally be putting out into the news ecosystem, this is who we're talking to, this is who we're taking cues from. I mean, look, no one on the left should be under any illusions that Joe Biden is going to move left. Why would he move left? He won the primary, right? The primary is the time when you push people to the left. He won without the left. He owes nothing to the left. So if you think you're going to be able to move him through a letter, and I respect the groups that put out the book, I respect them and I understand that this is a tough spot to be in, but it's just a fantasy to think that this guy is going to move to the left. He's been in Washington for almost 50 years. We know who he is. We know the way he conducts himself. We know exactly the type of people that are going to be in his administration. And, even Elizabeth Warren would be seen as too radical to be involved in a Joe Biden administration.
And she was the one who blocked him from becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve. I can't think of a more disastrous outcome than something like that. Look, Larry Summers is one of the commanding heights of globalization. He is one of those people who literally invented the system, pushed the system, and has been criticized left and right now for over 3 decades of American politics. He was blocked by Elizabeth Warren and other more populist left senators back in the Obama administration from becoming chairman of the Fed. Biden knows exactly who Larry Summers is. He knows exactly the attendant media coverage that's going to come. This is the point I want to get across. He does not care. He is literally telling you exactly who he is and exactly what he's going to do. Summers was in charge of the last bailout. How did that go? He pushed very hard for banks in order to get their bailouts. Poo-pooed, like I said, the idea of homeowners getting their bailout. In terms of all the structure, look at the coronavirus bailout. Whoever's the next president, if it's Trump, if it's Biden, they're going to have to deal with one of the worst depressions in American history. He is telling us how he's going to do it. He's going to put a commerce secretary from Bank of America or whatever in charge. He's going to put Larry Summers and these types of people in charge. He will throw tokenisms to any populist, left or right. I'm sure he's very good at that, right? He'll be like, I feel your pain, empathy, and all of that. But at the end of the day, they're doing backflips in Beijing from things like this. They are doing backflips at big banks all over the world. Their man is inside the house.
Yeah.
And they're fine.
Well, not only that, but again, it's intentional. They want the left to know.
Yeah.
They want everybody to know. They want Wall Street to know. They want the left to know that this is the direction. Suck it up and vote Joe. And what did we talk about before? Basically, since the Clinton administration, the sort of central innovation of the Democratic Party hasn't been any principle or policy idea or organizing tactic or anything like that. It's been what was called counterscheduling. That means basically saying screw you to the more progressive or leftist or activist parts of your base to signal to people like Wall Street executives and other corporatists and centrists and moderate that you're not like those crazy left-wingers, right? And the idea is that you can do that all day long. You can tell the left, tomorrow we could learn that for sure they're picking Jamie Dimon as Treasury Secretary. The next day we could learn that Bob Rubin is also being, advising Joe Biden on the response. I mean, every day they could basically kick the left in the face. And the thought is you have to take it because you have nowhere else to go. That is the central organizing political principle of the Democratic Party since the Clinton administration. And look, on a short-term basis, it was successful because they were right. Because the left said, you know what, you're right. The other alternatives are too bad, so I'm just going to show up for you. I have no other choice. But you get into this cycle and you're like, where is that going to end? Where is it going to end? And in terms of, yes, short-term, it was successful for them. Bill Clinton got reelected, et cetera, et cetera. But it has also meant that the Democratic Party doesn't ultimately really stand for any particular principle other than undermining and second-guessing the principles that they purport to allegedly stand for.
Yes, and I see this as, look, I mean, the Republicans are not making this case, and they should, right? I mean, they would be like, oh, Larry Summers is a tax and spend liberal. I'm like, that's not the issue, guys. The issue is China, right? I mean, but the problem is that they're all complicit in much of the same policy, in much of the same rhetoric, I mean, they were all there. Half of them probably voted to confirm Larry Summers to Secretary of the Treasury. So this is it. I mean, but like I said, for it to be such a blatant, you can't, the fact that Robert Kuttner put him at the top of the list, that means something. He's an emblem. He is like a scion of this movement, of this failed order, which is collapsing around the edges all over the world. And for Joe Biden to come and say, I'm going to put this man, I'm taking advice from this man. I mean, this is not somebody whose phone call should ever be answered by a global leader ever again.
And if you do answer it, you shouldn't put it out to a press outlet.
Yes,
you are.
You shouldn't be leaking it.
Shouldn't be bragging about it.
To Bloomberg. But you got to keep Wall Street in line, so there you go.
Speaking of Bloomberg, next on Rising, Bloomberg News was investigating ties between China's wealthiest man and the president's family. But then the company, Bloomberg News, put the kibosh on that. NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik tells us why that when Rising continues.